So I wanted to introduce the 1 o'clock session. And we've got 3 sessions with Impact Public Schools, which is out of the Seattle area. And I will have Jen and Kayla will probably be able to give us a little bit of a better idea of a location for us. We have an opportunity to have 3 different professional developments, 3 different cohorts with them along as far as professional development for teachers, for administrators, and then also for TK. This session is for principals and administrators in the area of best practice in elementary. Jen Wickens and I have known each other not a tremendously long time, but probably 6 or 7 years. We got connected on some things over in the Seattle area around charter schools and the startup of charter schools, and have stayed in contact ever since. And Jen obviously has had success in traditional and in charter schools, and she brings that success to us. Kayla, I've just had the opportunity to meet today. We've had a couple phone calls and conversations, and find out that Kayla is a Toutle Lake graduate. If you're not familiar with Toutle Lake is was at least at the time B11 football, B basketball, kind of down in the southwest part of Washington.
Don't forget softball, Kevin.
And softball. Thank you. Mount St. Helens area. And she has been involved with Impact Schools, and she's going to be part of our professional development over the next 2 days and continued professional development. So with that, I am going to turn it over to you guys.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And thanks to everybody who is here with us this afternoon. We're thrilled to be here with you today. And this session, we're actually focused on best practices in elementary distance learning for leaders. But I think no matter who you are, our hope is that you get something important out of this. We are going to share with you our journey through the pandemic and what we've learned and put together in hopes that you can gather something yourself. There will be time to interact with one another. And so we can't wait to get started with you. A little bit about me. Kevin shared some already, but I am raised in Washington State, have been a teacher, principal, central office leader in districts here locally and in charters nationally. Most recently was Chief Regional Officer for Summit Public Schools, Washington, where Kevin, Kathy, and others and I helped launch the first public charter schools in the States, working hard to build bridges with district partners who we love and trust and have good relationships from previous work. And now I'm the CEO and co-founder of Impact Public Schools, a new homegrown elementary public charter network here. And I'm excited that you'll get to meet and spend some time with 2 of our team members, Kayla and Abby, and I'll pass it to Kayla to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Like Kevin says, I am a former fighting Toutle Lake Duck from Toutle, Washington, located near the base of Mount St. Helens. I've worked in the traditional and charter sector for the last 9 years as a teacher, school leader, instructional coach, and curriculum developer. In this photo, you can see me and my family. That's my little son, Theo, on his first hike, and a local hike near us where we live in Tacoma, Washington. And now I'll kick it over to Abby.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be here briefly today. I'm here to answer some questions in Q&A at the end. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Impact. So I focus on model design, curriculum and instruction, and principal management. I have been in education for about 15 years, both here in Washington State and in New York, also in charter schools and traditional districts. And you can see a picture here of my husband and myself with our dogs just recently enjoying the pumpkin patch near our home in Ridgefield, Washington, this very small town just north of Vancouver, Washington.
We are so excited for this interactive PD session today, and we want to first just take a few steps for everyone to get ready together because we're going to ask and hope that this can be a really interactive space. And so first, we'd like Everyone, if possible, if you feel comfortable, to turn your video on so we can all see each other's faces as we interact. And once you've done that, if you can make sure your Zoom name includes at least your first name and last initial, you can do that by hovering over your picture and clicking the 3 dots to make sure that it is shows your name so we know how to address you. Great. So our agenda for today, we're going to begin by telling you a little about our schools, and then we'll move into our distance learning approach, where we'll stamp some virtual learning best practices. During this time, it will be a lot of us talking, but be ready because we will look to you to share ideas in the chat at different points. We'll test the chat function here in a moment. Then we'll have about 30 minutes for collaboration or work time. During this time, you're actually going to have 2 options. You can either choose to stay be in this room for Q&A to answer some more specific questions, or maybe questions about your particular context and how it might apply to you. Or you can action plan with your team in a breakout room, and we'll have a guiding worksheet to help you do that based on the best practices that we share. And you don't have to make your choice now. We'll go over work time when we get there. As questions arise today, please feel free to just pop them in the chat, and someone on our team will pause whoever's presenting so we can make sure and get your question answered. If there are any questions about today's agenda or what you'll learn today now in this time, I'm just going to give a moment for anyone to pop any of their questions into the chat. Okay. So before we begin, we'd love to just test out this chat feature together and see who's in the room. So when you're ready, if you can go ahead and just type your answer to this question into the chat. What are you hoping to learn from today's session, or what brings you here today? It would also be really helpful to see what roles everyone plays in their school community or in an organization. So if you can just share your role and what brings you here today, we can see who's in the room.
Kayla, while we're warming up the chat, do you want to just, since we're a small group, have people share and just come off mute and share?
Yep, that's great. If you would like, you can just go ahead and unmute and just share out loud. That's awesome.
Kathy, do you mind starting us? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm still typing, but sure. I'm Kathy Fromey. I'm a consultant with the Rural Alliance. I've been doing that for a number of years. And I'm here because I just think this is really important at all levels for administrators, teachers, and even the TK that we're going to be doing. In terms of the Alliance, I think that there are lots of opportunities, and I said earlier, for educators to be building capacity in how to provide instruction via online and from far away. So I think this is terrific. I'm here in support and to learn.
Thanks, Kathy. And it looks like, Greg, you're here to learn about remote learning methods. Anything you want to add on there?
No, just I've been working with a lot of teachers who have been everything from totally freaked out to smooth sailing. I'm trying to figure out what the differences are for them, what's working and what's not.
Thanks, Greg. Georgia, welcome. Good to see you.
Hi, I'm Georgia Hayward. I'm at CERCB, and I know some of you, but I'm really excited to see what you guys are doing and how leaders across the state are learning from each other.
Awesome, thank you. And Kim, superintendent, wanting to learn about distance learning. Anything to add there?
Nope. I just attend these all because I think they're good.
Awesome. We're so glad you're here, Kim. Dick or Kimberly, would you like to share?
Sure. I'm the community engagement coordinator in Spokane for Community Minded Enterprises. And I just get all sorts of questions from people about education and what direction it's going in and how parents can best prepare their kids. So I just thought that this would be helpful in relaying some information to parents.
Awesome. Thank you, Kimberly. And then Sue, do you want to jump in?
Hi, yeah, sorry, I went looking for my mute and turns out I almost turned off my mute, but I am just listening to learn.
Great, thanks for being here. Excellent. Well, we are going to, we're super glad you're all here. It sounds like we have a lot of expertise in the room, working with all different stakeholder groups, families, teachers. So like Kayla said, we definitely want to make sure that this is an interactive session. I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about Impact Public Schools so you understand a little bit more of who we are and what we're learning right now. We are currently in all 100% distance learning at this time, but we are moving towards moving back to in-person learning. I know many of you are either in-person learning or in hybrid right now, and it's likely that we'll be in and out of distance learning and in-home learning for at least this year, possibly longer. So no matter where you're at in this journey, I think this is an important moment for us to like dig in. This session is specifically around our distance learning model. So we're Impact Public Schools. We were founded in 2018 by a group of us who have, many of us who've opened several public charter schools locally and nationally. And we've pulled together a model combining just many different elementary best practices into what we believe is a breakthrough elementary model. Our first school opened in Tukwila, and we currently serve grades K through 4 there, or sorry, K through 3 there this year, K through 4 next year. We also opened Impact Salish C Elementary, which will be a school in South Seattle this August. And we will be opening our third school in Tacoma, Impact Commencement Bay, next fall, with the Renton School opening the following fall for a region of 4 small schools. We have a really clear vision. Our vision is actually an action in this moment. Many of us, as we described, are originally from Washington, where we really believe in Washington State students and schools. We believe that it's possible to eliminate the growing opportunity gap in our state if we work together. It doesn't matter to us whether you're in a district or a private or a charter school. If you believe in kids and believe in closing the opportunity gap, we want to work with you. We want to partner to do that with you because we really believe that one day Washington will boast a public education system that's connected, just, and vibrant. We have a 2-part mission. So our first mission is to prepare a diverse student population to succeed in college and impact communities as the next generation of equity-driven leaders. And we do that through the creation of the schools that we launch. We also have a second-part mission, which is to make a broader impact on public education across Washington State by advocating for public policies that close the opportunity gap and spreading best practices in elementary education to ensure every single child receives their right to a high quality education. And we do see our work with the Rural Alliance aligning to this second part mission as we're eager to partner with district partners across Washington State to eliminate that gap. Our model has 3 design principles. First and foremost, it's rooted in relationships. So for example, in our model, every child has a mentor. They have an adult mentor who is the liaison between the school and the family. That relationship has proven to be especially important during this COVID-19 time while we're in and out of school. We also believe that in nurturing student agency, by ensuring all students are working at their unique and individual level. And ultimately, we believe that the real goal of school, of public school, is true liberation, not rooted in command and control or regurgitation, but instead in the development of deeper learning skills that allow students to see themselves working on real products that make a positive impact in their lives and in the lives of others. We have 4 model components that are actually part of both our in-person model, elementary model, and our distance learning model. The first and foremost is social emotional learning. We have a very, that social emotional learning is the foundation of our model. The second is individualized instruction. Like I said, we believe every child should be working at their just right level. We also, a large portion of our day is focused on project-based learning. And these 3 model components are all wrapped around what we call a culture of positivity or joy. These 4 components you'll hear a lot about in this session from Kayla, and she's going to go into depth into each one. At Impact, we do serve a really diverse student population. So I think our populations may be quite different across Washington State. So just want to flag that we are 83% students of color. I think where there may be similarities is we do serve a fairly large English language learner population. Our community speaks 11 different languages, with the largest language actually being Amharic. Our students are making tremendous growth at Impact with this innovative elementary model. We see strong academic and SEL gains. For example, we saw 77% of scholars meet their growth target in reading and 87% of scholars meet their growth target in math in the NWEA adaptive norm referenced assessment. This actually placed us in the top 5% of the highest performing public charter schools in the country. In our winter NWEA data, before COVID-19, our students were on track to achieve an even stronger academic gap closing results. Later in the session, we're going to talk about the complexities of assessment during COVID-19, being in and out of in-person learning, because that certainly has not been easy for us, and we're curious to hear what you're doing to address the assessment needs too. I'm now going to pass it to Kayla.
Thanks, Jen. Before I continue, there was a question in the chat. Dick, I'm wondering if you want to share more to come off mute about your question. It says vocational training after high school.
In your mission statement, you didn't have anything about vocational education because not every student's going to go to college.
Yeah, I love that comment, Dick. We believe at Impact that we want to prepare every child to make the decision on their own to go to a 4-year college, so that the system doesn't choose for them, but they actually get to choose. They're prepared to make that choice on their own. We realize that college will not be the choice for all for a variety of different reasons. One being that there are many vocational trade jobs that are needed and desirable, and not all families. That's not every family's mission. For us at Impact, we just want to make sure the system doesn't select that for them, but that the child and the family gets to choose.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dick. Is there any question, comment from there? Or? Okay. Thank you for jumping in. More of that, please. The more jumping in, the better the session, we think.
Thanks, Jen. As we shared earlier, we think this is a really critical time in education, as I'm sure you all are experiencing in your own communities. And we believe that we're entering, whether we like it or not, a brave new world, one where children will have to deal with pandemics, new environmental and financial realities. It's also one where innovation happens faster than ever. And now, more than ever, our students need and deserve to have the skills that enable them to succeed in college, leadership, and life, so they can impact their communities as the next equity-driven leaders. This moment also has the potential to dramatically widen the gaps that already exist, and we're already seeing it doing so. And so it's just a really important time for us to ask, how do we create the best educational experience we possibly can? And I believe that that's why most of you are here today, because you have the same question. This means that we must look at the challenges before us, not as a barrier, but as new operating constraints. And those constraints are plentiful and very real. So in the early part of our design process at Impact, we named these constraints. First, buildings are closed and we cannot be in person, at least at this time. Second, at home, access to computers and internet is uneven. 3, families have to work, some from home, some outside the home. 4, technology comfort and literacy is variable. And lastly, some of our teachers have caregiving responsibilities of their own, which impacts their ability to comfortably do this work every day. We also want to name that we know that in many areas in the state, and maybe in your own community, internet connectivity is an enormous operating constraint that impacts many or all of your students. And later in our presentation and through follow-up resources, we're going to share ideas for best practices around alternative learning plans for those who can't be logging on every day. So after we named our constraints, we came up with a set of design objectives. These were things that we committed to hold non-negotiable in our design. First, whatever we create must preserve connection. Second, this time is trying in many ways, and so whatever we create must support wellness for our entire community. Third, we must create an experience that prevents a widening of the opportunity gap. Fourth, we committed to rooting ourselves in our original design principles. How do we still deliver on our original commitments to families, even with the current constraints? And finally, we said that we wanted to search for silver linings. Sometimes this is easier than others. We're excited to share some of our silver linings later on in the presentation, and we're also hoping to hear some from you all. As Jen mentioned before, our in-person model has 4 key components: social emotional learning, individualized instruction, PBL, and a culture of positivity. We've worked to ensure our virtual learning model includes these same key components. We've done that by thoughtfully blending whole class, small group, and one-to-one time to include a combination of asynchronous and synchronous activities that are led by the teacher. We've developed elementary-friendly systems, we'll speak more about these soon, that allow our youngest scholars to navigate the schedule with independence so that parents can focus on being supporters and cheerleaders, but not teachers. When we first faced the challenge of distance learning, we wondered, will it be possible to keep our core components even with the challenge of our operating constraints? Can we keep our promise to scholars and families? We felt very determined to make this happen. This brings us to best practice number 1. Define your core components and prioritize them. When designing and refining our distance learning model, it was critical that our model continue to include our 4 core components. We believe deeply that each of these components is necessary for a meaningful student experience. So a little more about these components and how they show up virtually. Every day, our scholars start with social emotional learning, and that happens during mentor time. It's the foundation of what we do. This was an important part of our in-person model, but we also prioritized it immediately as soon as we went into distance learning. Scholars also receive targeted math and literacy instruction in small groups to help them meet their academic goals. In addition, they engage in adaptive software on the computer in order to continue their growth. Project-based learning is also key in our model. Every day, scholars dig into real-world projects. For example, next week, scholars will begin the election project, which is specially designed for this year. Our scholars will explore big ideas, such as the history of voting and elections in America, how the election process works, all while participating in their very own class election. At the end of this project, they're able to demonstrate their learning in an authentic presentation to families and community members, which we call Showcase. We work really hard with teachers to build a culture of positivity and joy in their classrooms. Chants, cheers, and wiggle breaks and more take place throughout the day. And when scholars are having difficulty, it's our job to help them to be successful and engaging in a positive culture. For the first 6 weeks of instruction, in fact, we have been super focused on culture of positivity with our teachers because we believe it's the first thing we have to get right. And for this reason, we've named Culture of Positivity as best practice number 2, focus on strong classroom culture first. One important way our teachers infuse a culture of joy is through wiggle breaks. I'm really excited to let you take a peek into Ms. Stoll's classroom. This is a small group and you're gonna see a wiggle break just to get a sense of the joy that we're talking about. And Jen, when I press play, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear sound?
Okay, you guys, you deserve this little wiggle break. Let's see who's not gonna get tricked by Simon. So, Simon says, touch your nose. I'll start off easy for you guys. Simon says, touch your nose. Simon says, touch your chin. Touch your ears. What? Nobody got tricked? Okay, I gotta get better at this. Simon says, show me 10 fingers. Simon says, show me 10 fingers. Simon says, show me 5 fingers. Simon says, show me 5 fingers. Show me 2 fingers. Oh, Mason, oh no. Simon tricked you. It's okay. You can still play, okay, bud? Simon says, be very careful if you have headphones in. It doesn't look like only Mason does. Simon says, okay, roll your shoulders. Wiggles out. Simon says, roll them backwards. Stretch it out, stretch it out. Simon says, reach for the ceiling. Simon says, reach to the left. Simon says, reach to the right. Simon says, tap your head. Stop. Don't stop. Simon didn't say stop. Simon says, rub your belly.
So I think you guys get the idea. But because we can never get enough joy, I'm going to show you one more short clip of our scholars spreading some joy to our amazing Miss Bean, our principal, on Principal Appreciation Day.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, Jen, I'm going to pass it to you.
That was fun. I think those little moments of joy are one of the reasons we are seeing like an average of 95% attendance in our virtual learning model, which is actually pretty consistent with our in-person attendance. I think the students do feel they're part of a community. So as we launched Impact at Home, we knew that the endeavor would require like absolutely a complete team effort. And we would only be excellent if everyone knew and owned their new role. We knew that clearly defining these roles and onboarding the stakeholder groups was key to our success. So we created this simple tool. It's dense, so I'll allow you time to read it at the end, but essentially students focus on giving their full effort and curiosity to the school day. Families are responsible for setting up students for success and being cheerleaders for their students along the way. We have been very clear with families that their job isn't to teach their scholars, that's our job, but being a cheerleader helps. Teachers ensure every scholar receives high quality connection and instruction every day. School leaders lead the change management process, ensuring that everyone has adequate training. And the home office team, which is what we call our central office team, leads all the work on the back end, designing the distance learning model so that it is centralized. There's a centralized approach to it, and ensuring we're collecting both student, teacher, and family feedback to make adjustments along the way. So I'll pause for a moment for you all to read this slide, and please feel free to come off mute and ask questions.
Jen, how did you share this with parents?
Yeah, good question. So we, in the spring, we actually did a series of town hall meetings last spring to gather input on just what an at-home learning model could look like, what role the families wanted to play. We, before we launched Impact at Home, we did a dress rehearsal with families. So they actually hopped on with their scholars to understand it themselves. And then we did surveys each week in the spring to iterate on the model. The Impact at Home we're using now in the fall is actually iteration number 3. And it's we've made small changes based on both teacher and family feedback. The feedback sessions have been led and surveys in multiple languages, and like our 4 key languages at the school.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move us to look at the scholar schedule, which actually brings us to best practice number 3. In distance learning, which is creating schedules that align with your design objectives. So our schedule continues to thoughtfully weave best practices throughout the day. Students attend learning for 3.5 hours with the teacher Monday through Thursday, and 2 hours on Friday. There's both a morning and an afternoon schedule. Splitting the day allows for a shorter day for scholars with plenty of small group instruction. So that small group instruction is really where we're seeing students make academic gains in the virtual environment. In addition, scholars have a list of asynchronous, so not with the teacher teaching live, asynchronous activities to complete throughout the week, and complete all asynchronous activities in the afternoon, including their project-based learning work, spelling and math fact practice, movement, which is our version of PE, independent reading, and a series of enrichment activities. In addition to creating a high-quality learning experience for scholars, we also created aligned schedules across the school for every class in all grade levels. This provides consistency for teachers so they can collaborate during planning time, for families in cases where there are impact siblings at home, and for leaders so they can conveniently observe classes and see all content areas. While our families appreciate a structured synchronous school day for part of the day, we found that a full structured day, it was frankly just too long. We were running a full structured synchronous day in the spring, and the families were like loving Impact at Home, but like too long. That was like consistent feedback. So we made significant changes based on that feedback, and now we've grouped the synchronous times together, and in the other chunks of the day, scholars and families can complete the asynchronous tasks at their own pace in their own way. So there's like high structure part for half the day and less teacher directed structure for the second half. And this is a look at the asynchronous schedule that scholars complete across the week. So you can kind of see all the things that they're doing asynchronously there. We know that our scholars are not the only ones going through this crazy challenge right now. And our faculty members are balancing their teaching responsibilities with other priorities. One interesting fact, every teacher who has a child that's of the age that we serve has their child at Impact. So we know a lot of our teachers are balancing also being a teacher, literally in the same model. Our teacher schedule includes frequent prep time and many supports, including coaching, grade level planning, faculty circle, and professional development. And this brings us to best practice number 4, creating alternative learning plans when the virtual schedule doesn't work. So our mission is rooted in equity. We're committed to ensuring equitable access for all. We realize families have very different realities right now. Some are working from home during the day, some have multiple children in the home, some are working in the evening. And while we have heard from our families that more structure is actually helpful, we realize that this might not be the case for 100% of our scholars. Thus, for this small group of families, we're working with them individually to offer a more flexible plan that allows them to engage with the content at a time and space that works with their current needs. And in a lot of cases where we have children are in after school care programs or daycare centers, we have developed relationships with those partners to help them learn the impact at home model. We have 2 resources that we'd love to share with you, anyone who's interested. So please just put your name in the chat if you're interested. The first is an alternative learning plan teacher guidance document. This document outlines the range of accommodations or flexible options that teachers can utilize to support families with varying schedule conflicts. So we thought that might be helpful and applicable to others. And then the second tool is a sample alternative learning plan and letter to families. This letter and agenda is sent to families who cannot attend synchronous learning, and it explains how the scholars can engage fully with distance learning. So you'll have an opportunity to let us know if you want resources at the end of the session, but just ping us in chat if you want us to send them to you directly. And I'm now going to pass it back to Kayla.
Thanks, Jen. Next, I'm going to share a little about the tools that we are using, which are helping to make everything that we're doing possible. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how we made the decisions to use which tools. So initially, we experienced the same overwhelm that many educators did. Our inboxes were flooded, were just slammed with a ton of ideas and wonderful resources that we could take advantage of, many at low cost. But we wondered, as we're seeing all these resources, what exactly, which challenges exactly are we trying to address with these tools? And so as we considered a potential solution to challenges, and there might be many challenges, which is the most ideal of our options? To help answer that, we used 4 criteria. 1, what is the current and future cost of the tool or online program? 2, does this integrate with the tools we already use, like Google Apps or Clever? 3, is this company prepared to support lots of schools right now? And what is their support like? And 4, is the tool simple and easy to use for students, families, and teachers? One example of this is when we were trying to figure out how we would help young scholars navigate their schedule and easily get to all of the resources they need, whether it was a specific Zoom room or a particular app. We were hesitant to use something that was text heavy, given that some of our scholars are in the process of developing their reading skills. So we came up with the highly visual landing pages that you see here on this slide. The idea is that scholars can click on a teacher's face and be taken to a visual version of their classroom. From there, their teacher can say, put your finger on the red 10 o'clock. Now, click on the red fish. This is essentially a website created in Google Sites. We chose to use Google Sites because it is easy for teachers to edit, and we already have Google accounts for everyone. We also believe there are many ways that school leaders and teachers can get creative with this idea, even with just a simple Google Doc. That's why best practice number 5 is make virtual learning accessible even to the youngest scholars. We found that just after a couple days, scholars were able to navigate this on their own with just a little bit of teacher help, sometimes needing family support, but by this point in the year, definitely not. So if you're like us, and I can imagine you are, you know how important transitions can be, getting scholars to the right place in a timely manner so we can capitalize on learning time. And so our question was, how do we help scholars transition in this virtual space? And again, our goal was to remain teacher facilitated, not to count on parents doing this for every child every day. we decided to create an Impact at Home radio station that reminds scholars when to go from one activity to the next. It streams constantly while scholars are at work, but usually it plays silence. Just when it's time for a transition, you'll hear our principals log on and say something super sweet and cheerful to get scholars to the next place. We created this on radio.co because it was low cost and easy to use. Our third design challenge was, how do we keep hands-on project-based learning going in this new reality, knowing that not every family has the same access to art supplies? So we decided to create a project kit that includes all of the creative supplies students need for our project-based learning units. We mailed these to every family member, and we also included a ton of awesome books for our literacy groups. Finally, we needed to select online learning tools for a variety of purposes, and these are the tools that we are using. We would love to hear from anyone in the room who has heard of other tools or even tools that you see on this list that you found or heard to be successful. So I'm going to leave the chat open for a moment, or you can just come off mute to share about something that you're excited about, whether it's something you've seen at a school site, something or that you've just heard people talking about. We're always looking for new amazing resources. And we're also happy to answer whatever questions we can about these specific tools.
I would say too, like, if there's one tool on here that I think is like the most powerful tool, if you could only pick one, and it's actually somewhat, it's quite affordable. It's Lexia, and I have no affiliation with them. I just like see the amazing results that it does, that it makes for our students. They have, it's for literacy for early elementary, but it goes all the way up through middle school. And if students are online and there's little happening in an at-home model, like just being on Lexia for a portion of the day, a half an hour a day, will be really important. So I definitely, if you don't know about it, please look into it. It is adaptive, so it meets students where they are. And it's really, it's just set up visually well for students, and it provides data on the back end to show growth over time.
The other one that I'd say, which it wouldn't make sense to have this be your only tool because the whole point of it is single sign-on, but Clever has proven to be really amazing for helping scholars not have to remember a bunch of passwords and know how to navigate things. So they can always use their Clever to get logged on to all the different things that they need to access during the day. Thanks for adding that, Jen.
Cool. So we're about to, in a little bit, send you into some work time. But before we do that, wanted to just share with you like all the challenges that we're still faced with. This work is incredibly hard. And it seems like the challenges, when we solve one, then a new one pops up. Here are our top 3 that are keeping me up at night. And I'm curious what yours are. The first is just ensuring our academic program can work fluidly between in-person and at-home learning. I read something the other day that said there's a chance this pandemic could go on for quite some time, like potentially several years. And being able to ensure that our faculty can go in and out of Impact at Home and Impact the Building, and our students can do that fluidly in and out, is really important. In some ways right now, our models are really different, and we're working behind the scenes right now to make them much more similar. While they're similar in design principle, just like the execution of them is a bit too different at this moment. The second challenge we're working on is determining the data that is most critical to assess student learning. So we normally use NWEA MAP data, which is a nationally norm referenced assessment. They have put NWEA online as in response to COVID. We are concerned about giving NWEA online because we've seen families sort of lean in and help scholars with it. And we worry that it's not actually a true indication of where students are on their own. Though we are like getting some like funder pressure to do it. We want to ensure it's equitable. So instead, we are every 8 weeks proctoring Fontes and Pinnell literacy assessments. So those are one-to-one with a teacher and a student to assess growth, and then using our math interim assessments, which align to SBAC, which we'd be happy to share with you all if you're interested, with our scholars, again, one-to-one or in small groups. And that allows us to see if it's truly the scholar doing the work. And then the third, I'm so curious to know what you all are doing or thinking about there. And then the third challenge that we're still faced with is just building a flexible staffing model that responds to the realities of the pandemic. So we have spent a lot of time with our legal team revising our HR policies so that PTO and sick time is flexible for COVID should somebody need to quarantine or get sick. And there is a concern about just making sure we have enough adults in the building as the pandemic continues to ensure scholar safety. So those are real challenges, and we have some solutions, including some trained faculty who can rotate as substitute teachers. But curious for you all, either whether you support schools or you're in a school, what are sort of some of the challenges you're faced with or hearing about?
And you can either share this in the chat or come off mute.
You know, I'm curious. Boy, I think you're leagues ahead of most. Great work. I'm curious at how you're supporting students who have an IEP and even your ELL students.
Mm-hmm. Good question. That was one of our biggest questions in the spring. We are supporting all of our scholars and their unique needs. At this moment, we see that as an equity agenda. We have set up our IEP services remotely, and in 1 or 2 cases in person based on the needs of the individual IEP. I could imagine if you're leading a larger system, that would be much larger scale. But we are running virtual social emotional learning groups with scholars who are needing that support, and providing academic support from our learning specialists with targeted reading, writing, and math work. We're providing virtual speech and occupational therapy sessions, and just small individualized reading groups for ELL students and students who have IEPs. And just continuing that collaboration between the learning specialist, which is the person in our org that leads the special education and ELL work, with our general ed teachers, so that she's bouncing in and out of the virtual classrooms to stay aligned and consistent with the model.
Yep. You know, in terms of assessment, and if anyone else has something else to say, go ahead and say it. Otherwise, I don't want to. In terms of assessment, I know of one district, and it's for older kids. I don't know how you'd be able to do it for younger kids, but Tacoma, for students taking the SAT and the ACT, they choose a day and have 5 students in a room, which means you have to have a proctor for each room. But they've come in to take, and I know it's a different kind of assessment, but they're doing that so those kids can access ACT.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's assessment day or NUIA day, and you can get scholars in or figure out a way. But that's just what Tacoma's done for SAT and ACT. Assessment's a hard one.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting, but we could do NWEA, the winter assessment that way. Yeah, have them come in small groups. Yeah. We ended up doing parent-teacher conferences in the parking lot before we started one-to-one, just because we felt especially for our kindergarten students, it was very odd to start a relationship over a screen. So we did the one-to-one parent-teacher conferences. So there are ways to, as we know, to be in person in small groups safely at this moment. So that's a good push.
Yeah.
Okay, last slide, and then we're gonna either open up for question or bump to work time. So we are also just like critically like really focused on our faculty, because this is our teachers are taking on a lot right now. They are receiving, you know, significant distance learning PD. We're really excited about providing some teacher specific PD around distance learning and just innovative elementary models to any teachers who are interested in the state, including those who are engaged with the Rural Alliance. So that that work kicks off tomorrow. So please spread the word. All teachers are participating in weekly social emotional circles themselves to provide support. And we have developed virtual look-fors for each of our teaching components. So our principals are actually going into the virtual classrooms and providing feedback on those virtual look-fors. This is a tool that we've shared with many districts nationally. So we're happy to share that virtual look-for tool with you if you're interested. Each of our teachers are observed at least once a week and get coaching, which I think is helping them feel supported at this time when it's just all very new to them. So that is our final best practice, which is no matter what it takes, like continue observation and coaching through in person and in brick and mortar and at home learning. Like trying to make that coaching consistent is really important, I think, for a teacher sustainability and just focus.
Great. So just to recap the virtual learning best practices that we talked about. 1, define your core components and make sure that they're in your virtual model the same way that they are in person. 2, focus on strong classroom culture first, much like you might do in the building. 3, create school and teacher schedules that align with design objectives. 4, create alternative learning plans for scholars who have barriers to virtual learning. 5, make virtual learning accessible to the youngest scholars. And 6, continue observation and coaching and create virtual learning look-for so all teachers know what high quality teaching looks like in every component or content area that you have. So I'm just curious to hear from those of us with us after today's presentation, which practice you're most interested in or focused on, or maybe what would you talk with your friends about in the ed world? And if you could just come off mute, that'd be great.
So I think that as I look at number 6, and I thought about this earlier, I think even when we were going over lunch, and so I'm going to ask a question and then I'm going to come back to this. You guys mentioned that you're doing the social emotional on a weekly basis. What other training are you able to provide and how often?
To teachers? Yeah. So I think we have a lot of PD, so I don't want to freak people out, but we do 3 weeks of August PD before school begins. And then we have weekly PD every Friday afternoon. So our scholars leave at 1 and then we're in PD for a couple of hours. Some of that is faculty social emotional circle, but a lot of it is like training on a new skill. Or watching an expert teach part of a component and then trying it on themselves and getting feedback. And then on top of that, they get a weekly observation and coaching session. So there's a lot of development of the teachers and to get ready to implement these new best practices in their practice.
Something that's been pretty cool in the virtual space is it's now very easy for teachers to record themselves and watch their own practice. So now it's a click of a button as opposed to setting up your phone or having someone come tape you. So we're having teachers video themselves after we've gone over something and then analyze their practice either in small groups with their coach or on their own, which has been something that just felt a lot easier now. So we've enjoyed that.
Go back. So here is kind of where my thoughts had gone when I was going through lunchtime, because I knew that you guys probably were in a position to provide more professional development than a traditional school, because I knew that that you were able to do that during the summertime, end of the year, beginning of the year type of things. And it's more of the comments type things. I mean, good for you, right? I mean, good for you that you guys were able to provide that. In reality, the state of Washington should be taking a look at how they're going to provide 1 day a week for all traditional schools to retrain a staff on how to teach in what is now a new world of education. You know, I mean, who wants to get on a jet plane with a pilot that hasn't been trained to fly it? And so, I mean, it's, I say, good for you because you're in a position to do that. Unfortunately, I think for traditional, you're going to continue to see some of the same things until the state of Washington provides that time, because that time is not going to come from anywhere else. And as Kathy mentioned, you guys have done a really nice job of going through and thinking this through and putting together a really, really nice plan for your scholars and their parents and their communities. And so thank you for sharing that with us. You just done a really nice job. I think there's a lot of jealousy. There isn't a lot of people in this room, but I know between Kim, Jason, and I know two of us that have kids that are at home, there's a lot of jealousy in what you're providing because that's not what we're receiving. And so it's kind of nice to see that how thoughtful this is. Kind of some continued thoughts, Jen, as we move towards tomorrow and today, as we finish up today. We'll have some conversations on a much larger marketing of this to our people. My concern is, and we kind of talked about this even before we got started, but I know you're dealing with the same thing, the constant change, right? The constant change of, in August, it was going to be, are we going to go face-to-face? Are we going to go remote? You know, switched over within 7-8 days. They're going to go remote. Now, of course, they're going to move back to face-to-face in some way. That changes the time that they have and the availability for changes within their day. But all we can do is make the offer and see if we can get people in the room to do some learning.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate all those comments, Kevin, and I understand, like, having worked in both districts and charters, there's just like different challenges on both sides and different barriers, different constraints. I wonder about, for those who are looking for more training, either now or in the future, if we end up being back to virtual, I think the fastest way to learn, at least for myself, is to see it. And so we can talk about it all day with this PowerPoint or whatever, which, you know, is helpful for understanding the meta part of it. But seeing it, I think, provides the hope that we need to get over the fear. And so I would like to offer anyone who's on this call, or really anyone in Washington who shares our mission of closing that gap, if you would like to come see strong elementary distance learning in action, it's very easy now because I can just send you a Zoom link and you can observe with me or Kayla, and we would be happy to do, you know, a quick overview, like 15-minute overview, and then take you into a room and see it in action and then unpack it. I think that is what people need to see to actually really sink into this content, because it's back to that old, remember when you're first year teacher, like, is it possible is such like a leap. But once you see it's possible, you kind of you're all in. So I don't know, what do you think of that, Kevin, as like a potential next step, just offering that to those who might be interested?
No, I think that, I think that's a good idea. I said, I think we have to come up with some different ways to make those offers, and I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
I also,
excellent place to start. You know, again, you folks are way ahead of the parade. We need to build capacity. I mean, instruction is one thing, and we've always looked to build capacity in instruction, but we need now to be building capacity in providing that instruction online. And I think that's a perfect place to start. And I think teachers need to see it and feel it and practice it. And we have a lot who are struggling with that. I had a quick question. Out of these 6, number 2, you say is do that first, and I don't disagree with that. But if a superintendent asks you which of these is number 1, if I was going to focus on one of these things, where would you tell them? Would it be to strong classroom culture first?
I personally I think you have to first have a design, you know, and I think that's where it's challenging for some teachers. Like some teachers are out there just creating their own design, which is awesome. But I think us as district or central office leaders, the more we can provide a framework so that teachers can build from there and not have to build the whole thing on their own, I think the better. So I would say actually number one, like that's step one. What would you say, Kayla?
I was going to say 1 and 5. I think that going back to the landing pages that we created, the concept of high quality virtual instruction, if your kindergartners can't like navigate where to get to, then it makes it very challenging. So how are you equipping families and scholars with the ability to navigate their learning throughout the day? And I do think that it can be more simple than the Google site that's amazing that, you know, our genius COO created. But yeah, 1 and then 5, how to make it accessible if you have young scholars. I mean, middle schoolers, this is no problem for them, but yeah.
Right. Well, one last question.
Yeah.
How are you then, teacher evaluation? Same protocols, but now the look-fors are on Zoom.
Yeah, we just changed the look-fors to be on, you know, focus on online learning. So I think that is one of the most helpful leader tools we have. So happy to share that with you, Kathy, or others. Okay. But yeah, they're doing observations virtually and then providing coaching through Zoom. And our teachers have said like that's been really important to continue that relationship in the virtual world.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd say our principals are very busy because they have the same coaching load. You know, it's just really different. Cool. So I think we should fast forward, Kayla, to the survey.
I agree.
Cool. So I think that we'd love to in each of the sessions as we learn and grow together to capture your feedback. And so there's a tiny URL there, if you don't mind, just would they need to cut and paste that, Kayla?
I'm going to pop it into the chat right now.
Cool. We're actually going to give you a few minutes to do it because the feedback's super important to us. And then we'll take a moment to end. So why don't you take the survey in the next 3 minutes and then we'll come back together to end.
And so you can just copy paste this from the chat straight into your web browser.
Kayla, do you want to share this last slide for the others in the room? And then we'll, sounds like we have some follow up with Kevin to do.
Yeah, so we are really excited to be partnering with the Rural Alliance to share a series of professional developments over the course of the next year related specifically to best practices, building capacity for leaders and teachers in executing distance learning practices, diving deeper into some of those best practices that we highlighted today. And so these are the sessions that are coming up. So please spread the word and RSVP by emailing Kevin. We would love to have as much participation as possible. I also just want to highlight that tomorrow we're having another session at 8:30 a.m. Similar to today's session. So the first, I'd say, 20 minutes or so is going to feel really similar to today. It is for teachers. The idea is to really zoom in on that culture of positivity and what are the exact moves you can make in the virtual setting as a teacher to have that culture. And we'll have a chance to see 5 real videos of our teachers in the virtual classroom, just being their amazing selves, kind of showing what these best practices can look like. Jen, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's great. Let me know if there's anything we can do between now and then to help boost attendance. But if you think that would be advantageous for any of the teachers that you know to hop on, it is geared really towards sharing, like Kayla said, our approach, but then also providing opportunities for them to think about how they can develop the culture in their classroom, regardless of whether there's like a structured, centralized model. Just like what's within their control is like really developing that classroom culture. So we hope that is, that it doesn't feel like there's a barrier there, that they can take something away immediately, regardless of their like current district's approach.
I think that just to bounce off that, my niece right now is going to school in Arizona, and her mom was commenting the other day about how she's a second grader and how all the kids are like, half the kids are off video, half of them are like not wearing clothes, half of them are off like laying down on their bed. And I just don't think that just does not need to be the reality. And so these really are like video, like what to do right now in the Zoom classroom as a teacher. And so there's 5 steps to building that culture that we think can really support teachers. And it's especially powerful to see our teachers doing it, I think.
So do you think, Kevin and Kathy and anyone who's in the room, like, does that feel, based on what you saw today, does that feel like a responsive session, or is there any feedback you could give us for tweaking that before tomorrow?
This is Kathy. Yes, I think that's terrific until we get more feedback from principals or superintendents. I think that would be good. And we'll work on trying to get increased attendance. So,
yeah. Cool.
Kevin, you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I was just reading, Dick had sent me a text that basically spoke to sending out an email to principals and superintendents, and we'll do that after we get done today. And
cool.
We'll resend the flyer and just kind of just build it up a little bit more, and then we'll also send that to the principals that we're going to see in Chelan, and we're just going to have to try to spread the word. Like I said, I know it's a busy time for them, but I think they're also searching. I think that they're also afraid to add to their teachers' plates, because that's always a common remark. But yeah, training is training, and I think our folks need it. So we'll just
put the link, if you would please, in that, and so that principals and superintendents have it handy, and the Zoom link and code, and then they can just cut and paste it to their teachers.
Okay.
So then they can just click on. And I would add what Jen just said. There'll be something they could take away right away and use.
Mm-hmm. There's actually at least 30 minutes of work time built into it. They kind of choose their own adventure based on what they perceive areas of growth to be. So there's actually time to literally make changes to their lesson plans built into the PD session.
So they'll save time in the long run with what they learn, because they'll be learning things that will help them over time.
You're speaking my language, Kathy.
You have to be explicit for teachers and these folks. This is going to be.
I know. Time is golden. I know.
That's right.
I remember.
So, Jen, let me know if you think you're going to attend in person, and I will get a hold of Campbell's Resort and make sure that you have a place to stay.
Well, we actually have a family spot up there in Manson. So I'm gonna, when I get off the call my mom and see if it's available.
Okay, yeah, let me know. I didn't know we had one, so we always stay at Campbell's because we didn't know that we had a family spot up there. Yeah.
Well, now you do. Okay, this was awesome. Kayla, do you want to end us in any special way, or what are your thoughts on closure here?
We appreciate everyone's time, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the future. It was really nice to meet some new folks today. And don't forget that Tootle Lake is known for softball, not just basketball. That's it. Two state champions in a row, Kevin. 2 state champions in a row.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks to those who joined. Hope to see you again tomorrow.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Take care, everybody.